that's not everything we can do with those ratings. We can calculate 3 more stats, so to speak. So we're going to start off with the offense-defense bias. It's exactly as it says. It determines whether the Pokemon is more geared toward offense or defense. A positive result means that it's going to be more geared towards offense, whereas a negative result means it's going to be more defensive. So what you do for this one is that you take your best Sweepiness, you subtract your best Tankiness, then you divide by this, subtract that, so that we get an average of 0 and a standard deviation of 10. Now obviously there's a Pokemon that excels above all else in defense. We're not going to say names, we're just going to say that it put Regice out of a job and be done with it. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that we are not adding the Sweepinesses together. Same thing for the Tankinesses. The reason for that is because, well, there are Pokemon that rely on one of the 2 ratings only. Especially Pokemon like Weavile that have got high attack but no special attack at all. Or, in the case of Walls, stuff like Skarmory, who are much better on the physical end of the spectrum, and it would just be unfair to include its average or even subpar special defense in all this. Similar to that is the physical special bias. Here, positive result means it's more based on physical attack and defense, whereas it's more special based if you get a negative result. And here, you do take all 4 ratings into account. It's physical Tankiness minus special Tankiness, plus physical Sweepiness minus special Sweepiness, and then you divide by that constant, so that we get, once again, an average of 0 and a standard deviation of 10. Now, I don't think it's as meaningful as the offense-defense bias, because of Pokemon like, for example, the best example is Gallade. It has high physical attack, high special defense, so I just don't think it's as meaningful. You start comparing apples with oranges here. And finally, the last thing we can calculate is the overall rating. You add all 4 ratings together, you divide by this, subtract that, so that we get an average of 200 and a standard deviation of 100. Now, other than the physical special bias and the offense-defense bias, of course, these are all designed so that no rating will be in the negatives. You will get some that are pretty close to 0, but nothing at all in the negatives. But back to the overall rating, I'm not sure why we don't just add all 4 ratings together. After all, this is how we calculate the base stat total. But then again, I'm not the one who designed this. They probably had a pretty good reason for that. But if I had to venture a guess, I'd say it's because they wanted us to get an idea of what was average, what was good, what was very good, and the reason why we don't do that for base stats is because, well, they've been around forever, so we have a pretty good grasp of what a base stat of 100 means, for example. So now it's time to have one last look at our big hulking green dinosaur thingy, and as you can see, I put everything on there. The ratings, the offense-defense bias, which is in the negatives, meaning that, as you can see from the Tankiness and the Sweepiness ratings, it's more geared towards defense, though, as I said earlier, it also depends on the typing and the move pool, because Tyranitar is obviously better known for its offense, and the reason why its Sweepinesses are so low is because of that low 61 base speed. And for the physical special bias, no surprise there, 8.19, Tyranitar is much better on the physical end of the spectrum, though it can also hold its own in the special department, especially in special defense with the Sandstorm, which sadly is not taken into account here. And then there's the excellent overall rating of 353. That means it's just above 1.5 standard deviations above the average, which is, of course, excellent. We always knew Tyranitar had excellent stats. There's no problem in that department. Now, before we go, I just want to mention that these aren't meant to be replacements of the base stats. Well, maybe the Tankiness should be a replacement of the defensive stats since it's so straightforward and you already have to account for HP and defense anyway. but the concept of Sweepiness is more meant as a complement to the attack and speed stats rather than replacing them. So to wrap this up, here's where you can find all the ratings for all the Pokemon. Now don't worry, I'm going to add a copy-pastable link in the movie description, or clickable depending on what you have. But yeah, this is where you can find all the ratings so you don't have to calculate them yourself. So I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial about base stat ratings. Have a good day and see you next video.